Hi. So why we keep building Bavour and improving on what we already have, right? One of the non-negotiable for us is to ensure that everybody using Bavour, who is either the admin of a project, right, or who was added into a project as an admin or as a part of the finance team, can easily and immediately see the financial health of their project, right, without having to wait for any monthly or weekly reports, right? That was a non-negotiable for us, the ability of anybody that should have access to the financial record of your project to be able to see it in real time. Now, it's very important to also state that Bavour takes security very seriously, right? Especially when it comes to role-based assets. So only those you invite to your project and add them to your finance team can be able to see your financial record of any of your projects or the building. Somebody in operations do not have access to that. They won't even see it on their when they log in to access the project, right? Somebody in procurement, for instance, would not see it. We have some of these teams here, right, that you can invite your team members or your staff and add them to this custom team, to these built-in rules that we already support: finance, procurement, operation, project management, and admin. And you can also create your own custom team. Now, each of these roles have access dedicated to them. You can always open them to see the modules that this team have access, which means if you invite somebody to the finance team, these are the modules they will have access to, right? Now, going back to the project, you should be able to see the financial health of your project without having to call your accountants, right? If you're the CEO, if you're the project manager, if you're somebody that should be seeing financial records, then on Bavour, you'll be able to see it real time. So let's open the sample projects in my case, right? I have four modules here on the project level. So I'm going to open the finance. Inside the finance, we basically have four sub modules: insight, disbursement, budget analysis, and sponsor. Now, for the disbursement is basically where you get to control all the expenses that need to be made on this project or the buildings, right? So if you need to pay labor, if you need to pay for logistics, if you need to pay for anything whatsoever, right? This is where you get to approve them. So a payment request will be raised. It will be added to your review and approve tab. Somebody in charge will review it. After review, it goes to the awaiting fund release if it's disbursed, right? From here, it goes to the completed payment once the financial team disburses that payment, right? Now, this gives you control over your expense structure or your payment workflow, right? So nothing gets disbursed, no fund gets released until you're able to approve it. All right, so let's look at the sponsors page, right? The sponsor page is basically where you get to see the list, or you get to maintain the list of your sponsors, right? Clients, whichever one you want to call them, people sponsoring either the entire project or specific buildings inside the project, right? In my case, I have like 6 sponsors right here. Each of them with a particular amount that they expected to pay, right? How much they've paid and the outstanding, right? So in my case, you would see that Zeta Capital, they are meant to pay 10 million. They've already paid 10 million. So this funding cycle is fully funded, right? And they're sponsoring the entire project. Now, if I open this particular sponsor, you will see a record of the number of cycles that it took them to complete this payment, right? How much was paid, what method of payment was used, and the date of payment, right? You can add payment record using this button here, right? And you can also invite these clients. When you invite the clients will have a dedicated portal where they can monitor their projects, right? Or if you invite them to a building, they get to monitor the building. And so this sponsor basically has paid, in summary, amount paid is 10 million, so it's fully funded, right? If you navigate to the view funding history, you will see a payment history of all your sponsors, right? Month by month, and you're able to know how much came in totally in a month by all your sponsors. So for March, we received 13 million 800 something. February, we received 24. January, we received 26. And you can open this to see the payments that came in during that month. And here you have where we basically maintain a percentage of how much you received, right, by the different sponsors across in relation to the total that's been received so far. Right. So let's go back to the sponsor page. Now, in the sponsor page, you also have your each individual building funding pulse, which is basically what this matrix that shows you how much funding each building has received so far. Right. In my case, our building A has received a total of 30 million so far. Building B, 24. Direct projects funding, which are fundings not tied to any particular building. And I think of real estate that has to fence the entire land, and somebody is sponsoring that, not individual buildings. So It's basically recorded as direct project funding. Think of electricity, bringing electricity into the estate. Think of drainage, right? These are not expenses that will be tied to, these are not fundings that will be tied to a specific building, right? They are entire project funding and expenses. So they are recorded directly on your project funding. They are often sponsored by the sponsor sponsoring the entire project, or however way you want to structure it. But this record, it's basically tied to sponsors sponsoring the entire project, and then you have the total funding you've received so far to date, right? Now, if you go to your budget analysis, go to the budget allocation. This helps you with breakdown of your project finances and the building finances as well, right? So you don't have to wait for your accountant or whoever is in charge of your finance to send you monthly reports or weekly reports before you're able to know how your project is doing financially. You can look at this and have a full idea of where your project stands financially right now, because this is real time, right? So building B, we have a budget of 33 million, right? Building A, 42 million, and then you can see the funding received across the two buildings, the expenses made so far. Now, these expenses, it's not committed. Committed, it's not accounted for. These expenses are expenses that your finance team has already disbursed. It's very important, right? These expenses have left your funding pause. You've paid them out. Now, the budget variance, right? How much of our budget have we used so far in addition to our expenses? Cash available, how much do we have left after the expenses we made so far? The utilization and the status. So this helps you know whether you're still on budget or if you're over budget for any of your building, right? So that you can make adjustment, because the goal, remember, is to control your construction cost, because it ties directly to your profit margin or the loss that you may incur at the end of this project. So you want to make sure you're able to control your cost as much as possible, which is why Bavour gives you full control, right? From your payment request, approval to disbursements, right? You're able to monitor, you're able to know exactly how much is going out per time, how much expenses, how many payments you've approved that is yet to be disbursed, what payment requests are waiting for approvals, right? You're able to have a holistic idea of your finances, how much funding you've received, and how it relates to the expenses that are going out. This is basically what this will tell you. And you can also look at this metric to have a summary of that as well. Now, if I navigate to the individual buildings, I'm going to use building A. They also maintain their individual finances, right? Each building has its own finance that you are also recording, right? And you're managing, right? So inside this building A, I have insights, which gives me an idea of my finances, right? Projected expenses, monthly borrow rates, available runway, forecast, and all that. You get to see them here. I can also see an insight, a trend of your funding received and actual spending for this specific building, right? You also get to see your weekly expenses, your monthly expenses as well. And then if you go to your expenses, this is where you see all the expenses that has been disbursed for this particular building, right? Not committed. Disbursed means they've paid it up. You've paid it out, right? And this is where you can see them as well if you don't want to look at them from the project level. I can also see your funding, right, for this particular building. So this building has 3 sponsors. Gamma Limited basically have done 3 rounds of payments. This group has made 2 rounds, and then this corp has made 4 rounds, right? In total, we have 30 million so far that we've received in funding for this particular building, right? We also have other things in the finances, right? Like invoice, where you get to invoice the client or the sponsor asking for more funds, or whichever one you want to do. Budget is where you plan out the budget for this this building, right? It's very, very important, because it's basically where you get to know, this is the budget I have for this building, this is the expenses I've made so far, this is the funding we've received. Are we still within budget? Are we over budget across any of this stage and the entire building itself, right? You basically get to control that by building out your budgets and then having it tracked automatically for you. The goal remains very simple: helping you control your project cost, so that your profit margin is either maintained or increased for you, right? So Bavour helps you with your finances in real time, and they also have other modules that help you with the management part of your project, with things like resources, where you have the procurement and inventory, execution, where you have work breakdown, your daily logs, incident, RFIs, and schedule, right? And then your documents, where you have your files and your drawings, right? All these put together would help you manage any project you like. It will scale with your project, it will scale with your the individual buildings you have, and at the end of the day, help you make sure you control your cost and you stay profitable. Cheers, guys.